The Phillies are returning back from the wicked Wild Wild West and ready to reset at home. They get a day off back at Citizens Bank Park Friday nights, and we're back here at PHLY Phillies podcast. We've got Tyler Zulli, myself, Renee Washington, and our fantastic producer, Brenna, who's going to be filling in today as we have Jamie on the Gargano show. So we had a lot to talk about the last few days of just chaos going on with the Phillies, and yesterday as they closed out their West Coast trip, they did at least close out with a win, but we saw a lot of things go down. So we'll be getting into June Schwarber, Nick Castellanos, Sanchez, Bryce Harper. Should I say angry Hulk Harper?
The clock is ticking. You know that when the clock strikes midnight and the Cinderella's carriage turns back into a pumpkin. I think the inverse happens for Kyle Schwarber, where
Pretty
he
much
becomes like the prince, and the clock just continues to chew down, and you get the game started off the right way yesterday, and we talked about it. Like the difference between 2-4 and 1-5 was substantial. Listen, it was a subpar road trip for a team that's been firing on all cylinders. But the difference between 2-4 and 1-5, I think, is extremely. A 2-4 series was extremely salvageable, especially if you come back home and you take 2 of 3 against the Cardinals. Mm-hmm. Then you're looking at a series with a good Brewers team where if you have the opportunity to take 2 out of 3 there, you're back to an above 500 record over a 4-series stretch. 1-5 is a different situation. They went out on the West Coast, and it was what it was.
Well, the important thing is the Phillies don't get swept in either series, even though they did drop back-to-back series for the first time since the opening of this season.
Do I have to say it? Do I have to say it since Jamie's not here?
No.
Okay, just because he's wrong, but I'm just making sure. Do I have to say it?
Those are real series, and these were real series, unfortunately. So we'll get into that. We also will do some down on the farm, deep diving onto some successful prospects that we're keeping an eye on. The future is bright for the Phillies. Plus, there's some other exciting news going on around the league, looking at the way that the Negro Leagues statistics have been incorporated into Major League Baseball. So lots to talk about today, Tyler. But most importantly, let's start off at the top of last night's game, or yesterday afternoon's game, because John Lemmerman, Chris Lemmer, everybody as you're join the conversation. I walked away from yesterday's game with the pressing question that I can't seem to figure out the answer to, and I'm curious to know your answer and everybody else. What surprised you the most? Because I feel like yesterday was a weird game. We saw 4 pitches in, Kyle Schwarber smashes a home run and it's like, June Schwarber is here.
Yep.
We saw Nick Castellanos in his first 3 at-bats. Should have had 2 home runs, would have had a second home run if he was in 13 other ballparks across the league, but he gets a single, a double, a 2-run homer. We saw Cristopher Sanchez just be lights out. We saw Hulk Harper, who honestly, I'm a little concerned. I'm still trying to figure out fully what was going on there. Not great. The bench is clear. A lot happened yesterday. What was something that you feel like surprised you the most, or even impressed you the most?
I think what impressed me the most, and I know we're going to talk about him later, was the inevitable maturation of Chris Sanchez.
Okay.
And, we'll dive into him a little bit more in detail later in the show, but he has become a pitcher.
Yeah.
When he first, I want to say even when he first broke into the big leagues, but you could even take it back to his minor league career, he was a thrower. And the control was an issue for him in the minor leagues. It was probably a little bit of an issue for him in his first couple outings, his first couple appearances, and his, start his major league debut or major league career. But last year you saw a step in the right direction, and this year I think you're seeing an absolute maturation into a bona fide middle of the rotation, type of starting pitcher who is not a thrower anymore. He's a pitcher now. And so to me, I don't want to say it's a surprise because I expected maybe a next step forward for Chris Sanchez, but what he has shown me is when he's got command of all 3 pitches, especially when he's got command of the changeup, but when the fastball, the sinker, and the slider have command, he's become a dominant force.
Yeah. And we can stay there with Cristopher Sanchez because I do think, a lot of yesterday's, the offensive production, the fact that the Phillies got a win, snapped their 3-game losing streak, the things that can kind of overshadow how Sanchez pitched yesterday. But when you talk about the steadiness that he showed, I mean, he had a game yesterday that was, you get 7 Ks on the day, you go 6 innings. He did finish up the month with a 2.03 ERA for May. And, for him to come into this rotation that's already very solid at the top. We talk so much about Zach, Aaron, and Ranger.
Sure.
And Cristopher Sanchez is really locking himself in, as you mentioned, as a part of this rotation that you can count on, and you don't really have to worry. I know we're still worried about Taijuan Walker. You don't have to worry about Cristopher Sanchez. And I know Sanchez was mentioning after the game how he's just always trying to follow the other pitchers. He's always learning from them. He's watching from the veterans. And you can see that because he seems very, as you talk about that maturation, it feels like he's very grounded and wiser than his 27 years.
For sure.
That he looks like he's been a starter for much longer because he's just, I think, sticking to what works. I don't think he's trying to do anything extra or be anybody that he's not. I think he's just, when it's his day, he's showing up, he's doing what he's supposed to do, and that's what's helping to round out this rotation in a really nice way. So it was great to see yesterday Sanchez, again, be able to have a really solid performance. He's had some shaky games this season, and has even bounced back through that and showed that's not who he is. That's a fluke. And yesterday's game was more along the lines of what you expect.
Yeah, so I said a couple of weeks ago, I think Sanchez's best outing this season was the one against the Blue Jays at home. I think it was like a Tuesday night, and he really carved them up. I thought he was really, really good in that start. I think I could venture to say, to take it a step further, and I know, he went 6 yesterday, and in that one he got into I want to say maybe even gotten into the 8th, but I know he pitched into the 7th.
Yeah.
I would venture to say that yesterday was his second best start of the season.
Ooh.
And to kind of play off of that a little bit, I think that the easiest way to look at Cristopher Sanchez and when he's going to have success is how frequently he's throwing the changeup, how successfully he's throwing the changeup. And what I mean by how successfully he's throwing the changeup is where he's locating it and how much he's splitting it off his sinker velocity. Yesterday, we saw Chris Sanchez get up to 97 miles an hour. I think he threw 11 pitches above 16 pitches above 96. 11 of them were topping out in the high 96 if you want to round up to 97. When his velocity is there along with the command, because there have been times where we've seen him have a little bit of a command slip. When his velocity is there and he is topping out at 96, 97, the discrepancy between the fastball and the changeup rises. And that's when the changeup becomes so deceptive because his arm action on the changeup is ridiculously close to his sinker. His stuff on the changeup is disgusting. It's probably one of the premier pitches, off-speed pitches in baseball, and I think it's maybe a little bit overlooked because he's a 4 on this team. But when his fastball is A, located, and B, is up in the 95, 96, 97 range, that arm action on the changeup becomes so much more devastating.
Right.
And for his success, he's going to throw a ton of changeups. He's thrown 300 of them this year. Yesterday, he threw 35 of them. He threw 35 sinkers. So he was at 36% and 36% in his pitch arsenal yesterday. His success is predicated on his location and his changeup. And when they're both on, he becomes a really difficult pitcher to hit.
Yeah. And as you mentioned and talk about his best performance, you look at the games that Sanchez has pitched in so far this season, he's been giving up at least a run or two. We have seen some games like against the Angels where he gave up 4 runs, 3 runs against the Mets. He has had some games that, compared to other pitchers in this staff that pitch complete games, pitch shutouts, you can say it's not great because the bar is so high. But yesterday to give up 0 runs, 4 hits, and as you mentioned, the command is there, the changeup is there, and just the consistency was there also for him. That you really saw him getting in and out of innings quickly and just doing a really good job of handling the Giants and keeping them off the scoreboard, most importantly. So it was nice to see that, Sanchez was able to have this game, a feel-good game. You get the win. You are able to walk off after 6 innings, and he was in the dugout, already looking at, the footage and stuff and prepping for next game. And it's just, this is what is so enjoyable about, the Phillies pitching staff right now. It's like they're just taking care of business.
So, with him, there's been a lot of comps to that 2011 rotation, which, listen, it's still only 55 games into the season. I'm not ready to go there yet. You had a Hall of Famer, a borderline Hall of Famer, and a damn good pitcher in Cole Hamels to front your rotation. Now, I'm not ready to jump to that conclusion just yet. But when you do play like the breakdown by breakdown game with this rotation compared to that one, the guy that you're comping for Chris Sanchez was rookie year Vance Worley. And when we looked at Vance Worley, we were saying the exact same things. I'm not asking him to be Roy Halladay. I'm not asking him to be Cliff Lee. I'm not asking him to be Cole Hamels. I'm doing the same thing with Chris Sanchez. I'm not asking him to be Zach Wheeler or Aaron Nola or Ranger Suarez. But what he's provided you is more than stability.
Yeah.
What he's provided you is success. And we were super spoiled with the 4 aces and with, Joe Blanton being a 5 at times and moving on to having guys that supplemented those pitchers well at times, like guys like Jay Happ when he should have won a Rookie of the Year, but we're not going to play that game because Chris Coughlin didn't deserve it. But guys like Jay Happ and Vance Worley, and even a guy like maybe a Kyle Kendrick, who is a step or two down from what it's probably multiple steps down from what Sanchez has provided to you this year. But what you're getting from a 4 and what you're getting from a 3 in Ranger Suarez, for that matter, makes you so spoiled to what a pitching staff really should be. We've been so spoiled through the first 55 games.
And that's the nice part about all of this is when you look at your 3 and 4, these are guys that could be definitely Ranger is somebody else's 1. And instead of having those days like we've had in the past where, you're going through the starting pitchers, and once you get past your ace, it's kind of like hold your breath. That's not the case with the Phillies.
Sure.
Of course, we've talked about Taijuan Walker and what we think should happen of limiting his innings, piggybacking. I think in due time, that situation will be figured out. But to have 4 starting pitchers that can go 6 or 7 plus innings, which is something that they've talked about and wanted to do, that can give you shutouts, that can give you, 1, 2, 3 hits that they are giving up. That's fantastic. It just allows for this team to have that confidence in knowing your guys got you when they take the mound. And now for the offense, just go ahead and hit. Just go ahead and score because you've got starting pitchers that are helping you out. And I know in the chat, you guys are talking about some things that are surprising to you from yesterday's game. Yes, John Lemmerman. Whit Merrifield smacking a nice double, following up by immediately getting picked off was my least surprising thing. I love that. It's sad. I was so excited for Whit Merrifield in that moment. And as Dave P is saying, Spit Merrifield. Or there's other nicknames that are going in the chat
there's some
too.
other ones that are not as appropriate.
It was, listen, Whit, he at least gave you some okay at bats yesterday. He got 2 hits, right? He ended up with, I guess it was,
he definitely had the double.
Yeah, he had the double, and then I think he had a second.
No, that was just the 1 hit. Yeah.
Okay.
But he also walked.
That's what it was.
He did walk as well.
So he did get on base.
It was twice in 5 plate appearances. I'm not going to complain about that for a 1-game sample size.
And also my thing about Whit is if this is 1 or 2 guys, especially at the bottom of your batting order, you can take it. What you need is throughout to have other guys producing. And I think for Whit Merrifield to get a walk, to get the double, yes, he did immediately get tagged out, and that didn't last long, but he gave you something. Honestly, my bigger concern has been throughout the course of this offense, how they're going to consistently produce. And we did see yesterday production happening. I know Chris Lemmers in the chat mentioning Cristopher Sanchez was solid and impressive with his control, and it's, that is so on point. Absolutely. That's the biggest thing. We're seeing that from Cristopher Sanchez. And I know you guys are sharing your other thoughts about Joe Blanton and things like that. But Fred, K-Red, Randy, John, Dave P, whoever's in the chat, hit that thumbs up button, join the conversation because we're talking through some of our surprises and what we were impressed most about yesterday because the Phillies had a chance, let's just be honest, to fold. You lost 3 in a row. You lost 4 out of your last 5. You have 1 game left of the series before a day off, before you return back to Citizens Bank Park against the Cardinals. They could have gotten swept and just, woe is me, we suck. No, they did what we've been seeing from them throughout the course of the season. They responded well, and it started just 4 pitches in. As you look at the excitement of the game, it started early, and that's something that they've been doing well. And when they especially are winning, it's the Phillies jumping out, getting after teams early, scoring early, first inning runs. And we saw that yet again yesterday. And honestly, all that excitement made me want to just crack open a nice cold Miller Lite because when you have good baseball, it was a sunny day, you want to be able to drink a nice refreshing Miller Lite. And our friends at Miller Lite, listen, for decades, they've been providing us with some delicious, refreshing Miller Lites that doesn't have to feel heavy on your stomach. And with the great taste of Miller Lite, why is it the best light beer? Because it's light. It's not heavy. I've always disliked the fact that beer makes me feel so full and it hurts my stomach after a while because it's just sitting there. Well, with Miller Lites, you get a light beer that tastes like beer, but is also less filling and only 96 calories. When you hear that, the crack of the can or the twist of the bottle, you know you're in for a treat, because with Miller Lite, you get delicious, refreshing, and it feels good. And it's been doing this for decades that people have been enjoying Miller Lite. Great to have at the baseball game. Great to have when you're hanging out in your backyard, sitting around the house watching TV. And with Miller Lite, you don't have to choose what's best, because Miller Lite has great taste and is less filling. It tastes like Miller time. So to get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, you can visit MillerLite.com/PHLY or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. You can celebrate responsibly with Miller Brewing Company at Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories per 12 ounces, fewer calories and carbs than premium regular beer. Enjoy Miller Lite. They keep it simple, they keep it tasty, and they're always providing us with great beer. We're also going to have Miller Lite on tap for our London watch party, because next weekend, June 8th and 9th, we'll be down at Co. I can't believe it's already here, but as the Phillies get ready to beat up on the Mets, who are already, if you heard the comments from Jorge Lopez, I think his last name is.
Yep.
Yikes, the Mets are down bad. And so the Phillies get to go up against the Mets. Hey, there's me. June 8th and 9th in London. We'll be having our watch parties down at Gall & Co. We'll be at the Rockledge location Saturday, the Port Richmond location Sunday, and we'll have Miller Lite right there for you with some Miller Lite specials. Plus, we're giving away tickets. So enjoy Miller Lite with us down at Gall & Co.
Yeah, I am super excited for this event. I cannot wait. We talked about it on Tuesday or Friday, whatever it was. I don't know how to feel about a 10 o'clock in the morning baseball game, but I guess we'll improvise and adapt. And if we're going to have Miller Lite on tap, it's going to make it much easier.
We'll have some Phillies and scrambled eggs.
Yes.
And mimosas. And
and as you were saying, the good thing about Miller Lite, you can get it pretty much anywhere. And it only takes me about 3 minutes to get to my local beer distributor. You know what else? You know where else it only takes me about 3 minutes to get to?
Your fridge?
That's 2 Parks.
Oh.
Because I literally live right around the corner from Parks. I've been going there since I was legally allowed to go there. But I can tell you this, if it doesn't take you 3 minutes to get to Parks in Bensalem, that's why you've got one of these. And yes, my phone case is utterly destroyed. I'm sorry. And you can get in on the Bet Parks app. And it was a no-brainer for me when they opened up the app, because I said I've been going here for a while. When they opened up the sportsbook in Bensalem, it was beautiful. It's still beautiful. And then, of course, if I don't really feel like hitting the road or getting in my car or walking to Parks, I can just go on my app right from my couch and get in on all of the action. You get in the zone with Bet Parks Sportsbook app. Now, my play today, I know we've heard from VG earlier this week. Jamie gives you his plays. My play today surrounds a run line in an AL West showdown. The Seattle Mariners and the Houston Astros are set to do battle at 4 o'clock today. Seattle is plus 155 on the run line. That is, of course, to win minus 1.5, which means they have to win by 2. The Houston is sending Spencer Arrighetti to the mound, and he's given up quite a few earned runs over his last 5 starts. He's given up 3, 4, 2, 5, and 2. You do the math. He's given up some runs. He has won twice, surprisingly, but if you look at his numbers, he's posted a near 7 ERA this season. Now, I will tell you to be careful, because Seattle, as you probably know and seen this year, likes to win a lot of close games. They've won by that run line just once in the last week. Each of their other 3 wins came by 1, and came by 1. So be careful with Seattle, but they are throwing Logan Gilbert today. I like the matchup. I'm going to take Seattle to sweep out Houston at home to pick up their 5th consecutive win. And again, you can get Seattle on the run line at plus 155 at Bet Park. So download the app and play along with us. You must be 21 or older. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right. Well, I know in the chat you guys are talking about someone that needs some help in Taijuan Walker. I know. Every time we talk about the success of the starting pitching, it's hard not to mention the struggles of Taijuan Walker right now. Fred in the chat is mentioning how Walker better get ready to be pissed off in the playoffs again, because the only way he sees the rotation in the playoffs is an injury, and knock on wood, that will not happen in terms of the injury. Playoffs, yes. Injury, no. John Lumberman's also mentioning how he's got 2 more.
Very specific knock on wood.
Well, because I got to be careful. Lately, what I've noticed is when I say stuff on shows, if I'm not clear about what I mean, it comes back to bite me. So I got to be very direct.
On this day,
playoffs.
at this time,
yes,
with this weather.
The Phillies will be in the playoffs winning games, and there will not be an injury. There we go. John Lumberman's mentioning how he's got 2 more Walker starts left in him after his last 2. Yeah, I know the hard part, guys, is, how much longer are we going to continue to watch Taijuan Walker, but that's a problem for another day. We're gonna wait on that bit because
so you say it's a problem for another day. It's, you know what the funny thing is, and I think we need to like continually remind ourselves the problems that we've talked about on this show and as a fan base are so minuscule compared to what other fan bases are going through right now.
Yeah.
This team is struck on every single, like all they're any cliche, right? They're firing on all cylinders. They've struck every chord, whatever you want to say, right? They are doing that to like the 10th degree.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about, you know, your fifth starter, your backup catcher, your 7-hitter when your lineup is full. And these are the issues that we're complaining about right now. Other teams are talking about 10-game losing streaks, and you're
or how they can't stand their team.
Yeah, how your team sucks, and I hope everybody loses their job. Like,
yep. Or we're gonna blow it up at the trade deadline,
right? Or you know, and this is not their fault, and I do feel bad for them. I know people go, haha, it's the Braves, but like I don't. I don't like to see injury. Like you're suffering through your ace and your MVP missing the remainder of the season, and you're going to try to, you know, balance your way through that. So far, like you said, knock on wood, the Phillies have been relatively healthy and they've fired on every cylinder. So the things that we complain about are not complaints. They're just little tweaks.
Exactly. I think that's what it comes down to. Listen, as I've mentioned before, with how well the Phillies are playing, someone's got to be the weak link. Someone's got to be struggling. Everybody can't be perfect. And if it's Taijuan Walker realizing he can't pitch, in my opinion, more than 4 or 5 innings, because the longer he goes, you know, he's just not ready for that. You can piggyback. You've got Spencer Turnbull. That's not a major issue. If it's Whit Merrifield, who in every 3 games that he plays in for the Phillies is going to give you a walk, a hit, possibly, and nothing else, that's not a big deal. We're not talking about everyday guys. And I know #free Herb. Yes, Spyro. It could always be worse. We could always be Herb. But as Sam from England and the UK is asking, how are we? I'm feeling pretty good because Tyler, we did get yesterday 4 pitches in as we're hearing Kyle Harrison has won his last 8 straight games, I should say, that Harrison pitched. The Giants have won. He's 9-2 on the year. The 22-year-old rookie, this. Ping! Quiet that noise because 4 pitches in, Kyle Schwarber gets a nice home run. We are getting June Schwarber loading, and it feels like this West Coast trip, one of the things that did come out of it is the team was down bad. They lost 3 straight in a row. Don't get me wrong. That wasn't good. But I feel like through that, after being held scoreless in 10 innings, it had been 15 innings since they had last scored. Kyle Schwarber breaks that drought, gets them on the scoreboard early, gets the team feeling good. Nick Castellanos in his first at-bat, and I tweeted this out, and a troll was like, oh, great commentary. I'm like, the fact is the fact. His first at-bat, Nick Castellanos got hit. He hadn't had a hit the previous 3 games. So that's a positive. And then he continued to get a double and then a home run, and again, that double would have been a home run in 13 ballparks. Nick Castellanos, I'm hoping, continues this. I think we have more faith because June is on the calendar just 2 days away, that we're getting June Schwarber early, honestly, and that this West Coast trip brought out June Schwarber a little bit more. Nick Castellanos, I'm hoping, is going to also have this breakout from the conclusion of that series. The weather's nice now moving forward. You're back home next series. You know, the stars are all aligned for Nick. Let's hope that he's feeding a little bit off of this June Schwarber-ism, and we can get some June Castellanos.
I'm hoping for a return to like spring training Castellanos.
Okay.
To like April. So if we're playing like the progression game, you know, and I tweeted this out on Wednesday, and I was like, or Tuesday. Gosh, my days are all backwards now.
It's fine.
Tuesday.
We had a holiday weekend.
I have to give Castellanos credit for his commitment to the bid of having 50+ games of not having any type of plate approach. And I even said to a couple of people around here yesterday before the game started, I'm like, I may consider giving Nick Castellanos the day off today. And the reason being is because you have the day off today. So you would have had 2 straight days of clear the head, get right, get home, and reset for the Cardinal series. And he proved me wrong yesterday. I mean, I thought his swings were strong. The swings and the at-bats that we saw yesterday were kind of appropriate to what we were seeing in like a 2-week lead up, where he wasn't necessarily getting the statistical results, but he was swinging the bat better. The contact was harder. The exit velocity was more. And there was a point where I'm going, okay, he's laying off the down and away slider. He's laying off the changeup middle down. And then he kind of reverted back to it for a little bit for a 2-week stretch. Now, I'm not going to say one game changes the outcome or the complexity of his entire season.
Sure.
But for a 1-game sample size, it was nice to see that it felt to me like his at-bats were much cleaner yesterday than they had been in probably the last 2 weeks.
I completely agree with you. I know we had talked about yesterday how Nick Castellanos' WAR, which I know Tyler's your favorite stat, ranks 231st out of 232 players between pitchers and position players. How his OPS is 151st out of 158 players in the majors who qualify. His numbers have not been good. His chase rate has not been good. His, overall just at bats, he's been looking like a deer in the headlights. And to be honest, even with yesterday, the final numbers that I was reading that were astonishing. So we saw him get 3 hits yesterday. It was 3 for 5. And then he still finished the West Coast trip 6 for 27. So positive, half of those 6 came Wednesday night. That's what I'm going to lead with. But 6 for 27 is not good at all. So I would love to see. Yesterday was a good performance. I'm going to flip it for you.
Okay.
As you mentioned, him getting 2 days off. Honestly, it wouldn't be a bad idea after having a great game yesterday. You're off today. Are you off tomorrow also if you're Nick?
No, I think at this point,
you got to keep it going.
What I'm gathering from Rob Thompson and from Nick Castellanos is if there's, I say if, he's the only one left that could possibly do it. But if there was ever a player that was going to suit up for all 162 games for the Phillies this year, it's becoming very, very more and more clear that it's going to be Nick Castellanos. I don't know if he does, and that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to play 162 in right field. You may see him play, get a couple of spells at
DH.
as a DH, and you suffer through Schwarber playing left, and it is what it is, and no one wants to see that defensively. But I think to get Castellanos off his feet, it's really your only option, unless you want to give Schwarber the day off entirely, which I don't think they want to do at this current juncture. So if there was ever a day to give Castellanos off prior to the game yesterday, it was yesterday. Yeah. With that being said, I'm not quite sure he gets a day off in the foreseeable future.
I know. Slem is saying the same thing in the chat, that he's going to play 162 games this season, which seems set in stone. He has played the most of all the Phillies. Nick Castellanos has had the most games. His batting average did dip below 200. He's now at a 208 on the season, guys. There's yay.
Well, and he's
at a 605 OPS. But I think the hard part that I go back to before I let you finish is his struggles because he's playing too much. Because as we all know, everybody needs a day off at some point. It's a long
What do you mean? You
season.
don't like working every day?
I don't like working every day. Nobody works every day. We all have days off for a reason. And 162 games is insane for you to play. And the only time you get a day off is a day like today when they don't have a game. You sometimes just need to get away from baseball for 2 days, maybe. For a whole 24 hours, whatever it is, where your team is playing and you're not, and you can just cheer and you can just be in the dugout and just support your squad. I think it's ridiculous that you have a guy that is struggling so much to be 6 for 27 in this road trip of 6 games. And he's the one guy that never gets a day off. Like, well, I hate to say, you're just going to ride this till the wheels fall off. You're just going to let him go out there and continue.
The thing is, I'm not sure you have any other options.
He's not giving you anything.
Who's like
in terms of
genuinely who's playing right field?
That's not my decision to make. But would you rather have? Because who can play right field?
So
let's start there.
You would probably go to. Not that I love any of those, because I don't think any of them are right field. Not that Castellanos sets the world on fire defensively.
Well, that's my point.
But I would say your first look would probably be Christian Pache.
I think Pache or.
Because I wouldn't
go super utility Witt.
I wouldn't put Merrifield out there. I don't feel super comfortable with Marsh in right field.
But for one game,
it's one game.
Field,
I mean, that's
like we're not. I think that's what it comes down to. This man can't get a day off. You can't put Christian Pache out there for one day. Not to mention, here's my reasoning why I say I don't know who the answer is to replace him at right field. But what we do know is Nick Castellanos is not setting the world on fire in right field either. His plays are decent, but he's had some plays that aren't great. So it's not like you're getting Gold Glove right fielder.
He's become a zero defensively because he knows there's one play that he can make. There's one play that he can make in the outfield, and it's ranging inward and to his left, where he can make the slide with the basket catch.
Right.
He sets himself up that way. He plays positionally that way. And I believe now again, this stat means nothing to me because of the fact that he's not ultra aggressive in the outfield, but I believe he just cracked the 300 game mark or something like that without an error.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean
helps when you play every game.
That doesn't mean anything to me because of the fact, like I said, he's not ultra aggressive. He doesn't take chances. He knows how to cut off angles enough. And Randy, by the way, so you're saying you can't start Pache over Castellanos. I was talking about one game.
Yeah, we're not talking about forever.
I meant to get him off his feet for one game.
To give Nick Castellanos a day off. Yes, you can. And you know who else could actually play right field? Cody Clemens. He hasn't played right field a ton. Yeah, he played 8 games in the right field for the Phillies. I think it was last year. He's someone that can play a lot of positions. I'm talking about for one game, guys. I'm not saying move him forever. But Nick Castellanos, much like everybody else on this team, can afford to get a day off. And if it means that one game you got to swallow your pride and hold your breath a little bit because Christian Pache or Cody Clemens is in right field, I don't think Witt has the arm for it. As John is saying, I agree with that. And also Witt is just not doing great in general. But for one game, for one day, guys, I think what Nick is giving, which is not a lot, you're not losing anything if he's not in the lineup.
Your long-term solution is Nick Castellanos. And it's going to be Nick Castellanos. And there's no other way to, I mean, unless they make a variable trade that we don't consider and you are confident in either paying both Castellanos and who you trade for, or you are moving Castellanos in the deal, which I don't suspect is the case. But I think your long-term solution to the right field position is Nick Castellanos, and you're gonna live with it. And I don't think that it's necessarily the worst thing in the world, because I know that when he does get hot, he can have days and not just days, but stretches, weeks on end where he plays like he did yesterday. And I also know you're going to live by the sword and die by the sword with Nick Castellanos. And that's why, we weren't talking about a long-term solution. The long-term solution is
the same thing.
Is Casty. It's talking about for a one-day sample size. I'm probably going to take the guy with the best arm out of the group, and I'm going to take Johan Rojas out of that equation because I'm not moving. I want him in center field if he's going to play.
For sure.
But the guy with the best arm out of the group, statistically speaking, is Christian Pache, an average arm velocity of almost 92 miles an hour. He ranks 17th across Major League Baseball. Now, he's only made 51 throws compared to a lot of guys who are up in the hundreds.
Right.
But he does have the best arm of the group. If for a one-day sample size, we're talking strictly defensively and arm talent, Christian Pache would be it. But your long-term answer is Nick Castellanos.
Yeah, and exactly. I know, Randy, you're saying the same thing, that he meant other people that are ready to bench Castellanos.
Oh, no.
That's not the answer. We agree with you. That is not the answer to bench him entirely, because, listen, Nick Castellanos, for where he is on this team and his role, it's not great, but you know what you can get for him. He is a veteran. We have seen him, especially look at like last year down the stretch in big moments. We know what you can get from Nick Castellanos. I think the issue is he needs to get off his feet. He needs to have a day where, and I was mentioned Brandon Marsh in the chat, Pache, for one game, if you have to move, we saw when Bryce Harper got ejected, the way that the entire infield and everything just completely changed. For one day, you can get away with things being a little bit ugly. We've seen it at times where it's not a great lineup. And if it means to get Nick Castellanos a full rest, not a DH rest, a full rest, I'd be all for it.
Well, and the unfortunate part of this conversation is it's happening after his best game in 3-week stretch.
So it looks stupid.
we sit here and we go, are you complaining about Castellanos after a 3 for 5 day? No, it's more of a larger sample size conversation. But I understand. You're going to see this clip and go, he was good yesterday, and he was. But I think he was good yesterday.
To your point, that's actually even more reason why I want him to have a day off, because we know he can be good. We know that Nick Castellanos, this isn't a situation of like, Whit Merrifield's a great example. Whit Merrifield is struggling right now. And we know an aging Whit who is not, did not come in with the expectation of playing every day. You have no idea what you're going to get from Whit Merrifield this season. We have no idea if that move even is going to make sense. But we know what we can get from Nick Castellanos. So if getting him a day off means we can get more of what we saw Wednesday consistently, I'd be all for that one game, slotting Christian Pache in the right field, getting Nick a day off, helping him be able to perform at the level we saw Wednesday of going 3 for 5 with a home run, if that's what it takes, because he has that potential. And if Nick Castellanos can play better on top of June Schwarber, on top of Trey Turner coming back in a couple weeks, now you're really clicking. Things really get excited. And that's what I'm looking forward to with getting him a day off. Give him a break. Give him a chance to be able to reset, because it's a long season and you want to be built to last. And you know where you can get ready for the season ahead and be built to last with quality shades? Shady Rays. Our friends over at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized sunglasses that won't break the bank. Their shades are fantastic. They're an independent sunglasses company offering world-class products that are rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. And their shades have durable frames, crystal clear optics, and they are the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. Whether you're hanging out at the beach, going hiking, taking in some baseball, you've got Shady Rays that have hundreds of options to choose from to make sure that you can find the perfect pair that matches your style, matches your swag, but also gives you a chance to be able to rock some great sunglasses out and about. So with Shady Rays, you have an opportunity today to make sure you're checking them out, because not only do they have great quality, but they also really protect you and making sure if you ever need to exchange for a new pair, if you ever lose or break a pair, they've got return worry-free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. They're not expensive. They're not going to break the bank. But also, if they do happen to break physically, you don't have to worry about it. You can always get a new pair of Shady Rays. So exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. You can head to shadyrays.com and use the code PHLY to get 35% off your polarized sunglasses. You can try them for yourself. The shades that are rated 5 stars. 5 stars. Cinco. The trois quatre. Cinq. I had to think of the number in French. On the
You're doing great.
Cinq.
You got any more?
That's all I got. I only know 3 languages. 5 stars by over 300,000 people with Shady Rays. How many languages do you know?
No, effectively 1. I've always said, so I took 5 years of Spanish, 4 in high school and a full year in college. I can read Spanish.
Okay.
I cannot have a conversation with you in Spanish. Like if you said something to me, I might be able to comprehend it, but I have absolutely no ability to speak it back to you.
Fair.
If you put an article in front of me that's in Spanish, I think between my ability to grammatically break things down and my remembrance, because I haven't spoken Spanish since I left college, but my remembrance of what I do know, I think I could read you that article. At least, like, you know how grammar kind of fluctuates language to language, and if you were to like take an article, make it Spanish, and then make it back into English, there might be some like differences between the first 2 Englishes. I could give you a grammatical, like phonetic type of rundown. I may not read it perfectly, but I could do that. I can't.
So 1.5 languages.
I can't speak it at all. Cannot speak it whatsoever. And I tried. I really did, and I did well in Spanish up until like senior year, and then all of a sudden my grades dipped because my teacher said, we're not speaking English anymore.
Yeah, I was an AP Spanish student, minored in Spanish.
Good for you.
Until like, I was great until I also got into like a Spanish linguistics class, and it was like the first day was like, and I was like, I'm not ready for this. Yeah, it's hard.
The minute
but I can speak it.
The minute your professor or teacher goes, hey, we're no longer speaking English in this class, and you have to speak to me in Spanish, I went,
that's right.
Okay, well, so I didn't quite know what I was doing there, but I do know if you want to become a diehard for us, that's a good get for you. Learning Spanish is also a good get for you, because I think everyone should know multiple languages, but I can tell you with certainty that you should become a diehard, because it allows you so much extra content, so many extra gifts. And here's just some of the rundowns of what you get when you become a diehard with PHLY. You know you're going to get all of our post-game shows. You know you're going to get all of our regular podcasts and live shows every day. But when you become a diehard at allphly.com, you will also get premier written content from some of our amazing writers on this staff, including our own John Foley. You get some stuff from our friend Jim Salisbury. And of course, you can read everything that all of our other staffs have to offer. Kyle Newbeck does a great job. Charlie O'Connor does an amazing job. Zach Berman, all of our friends. And that's just naming a couple. I don't want to leave anybody out, but you know how good our staff has become. And some of their premium content can only be found if you become a diehard at allphly.com. You'll also get 20% off all paid events. You'll get some great merch for all of your teams. And when you sign up, you get a free shirt just for becoming a member. If you saw me the other day on the post-game show, I was wearing our black PHLY shirt. It's the same logo as this hat, just in t-shirt form. And it is super, super comfortable. I'm very picky with my t-shirts, Renee, because as you know, my build's a little weird. I'm tall, but I don't have a lot of muscle mass to me. So I'm very picky with my shirts, and the PHLY shirt is super comfy. And it is the best way to get in on all of the extra action. And right now, if you go over to allphly.com, you can sign up for our first annual Liberty Open. Yes, we're having a golf outing July 13th at Valley Brook Country Club in Blackwood, New Jersey. It is a scramble format, so grab your buddies, grab your friends, or you can even sponsor a hole if your company is interested. You'll get 18 holes with a cart, tournament gifts, and tee prizes as well. You'll also get an opportunity to join us for our Taste of Philly dinner and post-round ceremony at the Pavilion. Unlimited draft beer for 2 hours post-round. And, of course, we'll have some contests and some team prizes on the course as well. And remember, as Renee made mention, we will be at Gall & Co. for the London Series, both June 8th and June 9th. So everything you can find, all of that information will be at Rockledge on Saturday and in Port Richmond on Sunday. You can find all of that information at allphly.com. And there's never been a better time to become a PHLY diehard.
I love it. I love it. So as we wrap up yesterday's games discussions, we've got more to get into, and time is a ticking. So we saw Kyle Schwarber, just some numbers for you guys. That was the 5th time this season and the 36th time in his career that Kyle Schwarber opened up the game with a home run. So for anybody that is still on the bandwagon of removing Kyle Schwarber from leadoff, stop it. He's fine. The Phillies are fine. Everything is fine. This is fine. Kyle Schwarber does also lead the league. He's number 3 currently across Major League Baseball in walks. Top of the league, we've got Aaron Judge and Kyle Tucker that are above him, and then Schwarber with 42 walks on the season so far. He is top 20 in home runs with 11. He's tied for 15th. He's tied for 19th in RBIs. We're getting Kyle Schwarber, and it's not even June yet, with a 2.46 average, 7.94 OPS. Not even June yet, and already honestly looking really good, moving faster, giving good at bats. And it's been great to see the early emergence of Kyle Schwarber. And I'm excited to see what June Schwarber is going to look like if this is pre-June Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah, and it's not scattered singles anymore.
No,
I mean, it is line drive, laser singles off of his. And I shouldn't say scattered singles in terms of exit velocity, because the man has a violent, it's a controlled violent swing, and the ball explodes off of his bat.
Yep.
But you talked about the 246 average and the near 800 OPS already. He's got 11 home runs this year, which is through 55 games, he's on pace for about 30, 33-ish, which would be a Phillies low by a significant amount. But he's also on pace for almost 150 hits, which would be a Phillies high. So I understand that you want to talk about, the sheer power of Kyle Schwarber, and we know the trajectory of like June onward. So he might end up at 40 just by, he might hit 10 this month. We don't know. But I think the fact that Kyle Schwarber has become such a well-rounded leadoff hitter this season, we know he has a premier eye. He walks a ton all the time. No matter what his batting average is, you can take a look at his batting average and basically add at least 100 points for his OBP, right? 218 to 323, 197 to 343. This year, he's hitting 246 like you mentioned, and the OBP is almost 370. So we know he's going to walk.
Oh, yeah.
He always walks. And the thing that I think has separated Schwarber this year is the fact that, A, he's hitting for contact at a way we've not seen since the year he got traded when he split time between Washington and Boston. But the fact that he's hitting left-handed pitching at a ridiculous clip. I mean, I think at one point earlier in the year, he was at over 300 hitting left-handed pitching.
Yep.
And so if this guy's going to hit 250 and still hit 35-ish home runs, and his walk rate's going to remain up, and his strike, he's still going to strike out probably 180 to 200 times this year. It's just what Kyle Schwarber does. But he has become a true leadoff hitter. And I know that people go, well, he doesn't steal a lot of bags and his batting average is a little low. But here's the thing. If he's a tone setter like we saw twice over the course of this 6-game road trip, and his on-base percentage is nearly 400, I don't care if he's not necessarily stealing bags.
Right.
I care about him getting on base and setting a tone.
Exactly.
And he's done a tremendous job this year of setting a tone, both with the long ball and his ability to hit left-handed pitching. I think the conversation about should Kyle Schwarber be or not be the leadoff hitter should be dead at this point.
Oh, it's over. It's absolutely over. He's proven it, and let's let that rock. I will say just one of the nuggets for Nick Castellanos. There's an interesting stat if you wanted to know, and sure, I'll share this with you, of the guys that have played every game or almost every game for their team. Of course, Nick Castellanos represents the Phillies. Some other guys around the league that have played every game or almost every game for their team. The most, Jurickson Profar, who's playing really well for San Diego.
How about Profar's resurgence?
And Fernando Tatis. Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts,
well,
Teoscar Hernandez,
those two guys you expect.
Ha-Seong Kim, Josh Bell, Aaron Judge, Julio Rodriguez, Juan Soto, Nick Castellanos is in that conversation. So an interesting stat. The guys that are playing every game or almost every game for their team are those guys. So just want to leave that out there. I'm going to just let that marinate. You take that however you want to take that.
Do you notice, I don't know if you noticed it when you were running off that list. Remember how you guys talked about the Braves kind of consistently using a starting 9 and sticking with it? The Padres have been that way this year too.
They have.
You mentioned Profar. You mentioned Tatis. You mentioned Ha-Seong Kim, who I don't know if we've talked about Ha-Seong Kim or not. I am like the biggest Ha-Seong Kim fan in the world because he is a literal premier defender and will play 7 of the 9 positions on the field.
Well, the interesting thing, as you mentioned, that is for San Diego, they've got 3 guys that are in the top of the league for games played. For the Dodgers, they have 3 as well, in Freeman, Hernandez, and Betts. For the Yankees, they have 3 as well in Judge, Soto, and Gleyber Torres. And then actually Luis Arias has played almost every game for San Diego as well. So when you look at some teams, they do have 3 or 4 guys that have played every game. Alec Boehm's day off yesterday was his first. He's played 56 of the 57 games for the Phillies. So just for context of, longevity of the season and things like that, I think it's just interesting to keep that in mind. All right, moving along, though, because we've got some things to run through and we don't have a whole lot of time here. Let's take a quick look down. First, let's look ahead at the series coming up because, as we know, today is a day off. The Phillies play tomorrow, starting up against St. Louis. We actually have a post-game show tomorrow, so we're not going to be able to chat with you prior to the game tomorrow for that 6:40 start. We've got starting things off for the Phillies. Get to see Aaron Nola back on the mound going up against Miles Mikolas. Saturday, it's Ranger time.
So close. Michaelis.
Whatever. Miles
Not
Michaelis.
as bad as Jamie.
My apologies,
Not
Miles.
as bad as Jamie calling.
Well, I feel like it's Polish.
What TV
Mikolas.
show does he call him? That's something with, I don't remember. Something with
I don't know. Ranger Suarez versus Sonny Gray. Taiwan Walker versus Lance Lynn on Sunday. So we will get to see Aaron, Ranger, and Taiwan getting the starts this weekend. Let's hope they can continue what we saw Cristopher Sanchez do Wednesday nights and keep rolling with the consistency, keep rolling with the great pitching that we've seen. And Taiwan, I know there's a lot of eyes on Walker right now. Let's hope that he can take a step forward because, as I mentioned yesterday, unfortunately, every game Taiwan Walker has pitched in, his ERA has progressively dropped, and the amount of hits and runs that he's giving up are increasing in a way that's not good. So hopefully that can change this weekend, and they can pitch more like what we saw Sanchez do. I know you had some information on his changeup for Sanchez as we put a bow on.
Yeah, so real quick on that Sunday night game, which, by the way, Sunday Night Baseball, I love Sunday Night Baseball. It's the best. I'm taking the over in that one. I know Lance Lynn's pitched well in his last 2 starts, but you know what you're getting out of Lance Lynn. He's a fastball type of guy. And Taiwan Walker's not pitched tremendously well. So I'm going to take the over. I don't even know what it is. I'm just going to blindly take it for Sunday. Yeah, but if you take a look at that graphic there that Brennan just posted, the thing that impresses me most, and this is from a home plate facing the pitcher viewpoint, so like where the umpire sees, with a left-handed pitcher in Cristopher Sanchez, the prominent type of hitter that he is going to throw that changeup to is right-handed hitters. That's kind of the rule of thumb, right? Breaking ball to same side, off speed to opposite side. And if you look at the location of that, Renee, he's thrown that pitch 300 times. 34.1% of his pitches have been changeups. Look at where he locates. That's down and away to right-handed pitching. Now, the top of the heat map is a little bit high, but that's, kind of the upper echelon of the heat map. The bulk of it is down and away.
Yeah.
When he's hitting his spots with that changeup, I want him down there. Plus, you see where it starts to kind of get into a light red shade of blue down to the right side of the plate. That's where I want him, on that diagonal path, because when he lets that pitch go, the changeup naturally has that backhand release point where it's, counterclockwise or clockwise rotation for a lefty as it spins out of his hand from the mound. That's exactly in that downward directional path that I want that changeup to be. His location with that pitch when it's on, he almost becomes like an unhittable pitcher with that.
Yeah. It's fantastic to see. That's a wild graphic to take a look at. So let's hope that things don't change up this weekend for the Phillies pitchers and they can continue. They can continue the fantastic consistency that we've seen from them in this start. All right, let's head down on the farm to recap some Phillies prospects that are really showing out. And the future is very promising when you look at the Phillies. Starting things off, I got to go with, I had him second to be mentioned, but when you hit your first ever career Grand Slam, we gotta talk about you. It's Aiden Bauer-Miller, who I feel like we talk about every time we're going down to the farm. And yes, we do.
Every time.
Because Aiden is really good. It was a 95-mile-per-hour fastball in the zone. He hammered it in the 9th inning for a Grand Slam. It was his 5th home run of the year. It came off his bat at 106.9 miles per hour and went 372 feet. That was in the game yesterday for Aiden Miller. Wednesday night. Fantastic to see as he's continuing to climb the standings in terms of prospect rankings. He is sitting in some spots as the number 2 Phillies prospect. And Aiden Miller also is top of the league in doubles. He has a league tying 14 doubles on the season for Clearwater. He's been really good, and he's honestly been consistent as well. He's a power hitter. He's also a versatile guy. As we talk to him, he can play shortstop, third base. He can play in so many different roles and has had 4 home runs, 21 RBIs, 35 hits, 10 stolen bases in 29 games with a slashing line of 310, 423, 531, and a 954 OPS. Aiden Miller is somebody to absolutely watch, and he's been great to watch so far. Still very young, still very under the radar, not anymore because of his injury. But now he's showing people exactly what he can do healthy when given opportunity, and he's crushing it, literally.
So this guy is going to be a major league player. I am 100% convinced that this kid is going to be a major league player. I know he's only in Clearwater, and that is insane to hear come out of my mouth because I am the biggest trade prospects for proven players. Like I'm leading that brigade of always get the major league player if you can. I know that he's only 20 years old,
he's
19,
like 20,
19 years old.
I don't even know what his birthday is.
I genuinely believe whether it's at shortstop, whether it's at third base, or whether it becomes a positional need for him to maybe even consider being a corner outfielder. I genuinely believe that this kid is going to be a major league player and a darn good one at that. He's got the pop, like you talked about. He's a gaps hitter right now, driving in a ton of runs, and as you mentioned, hitting for gap to gap power, a ton of doubles, and I think the positional versatility is huge for him. I would like to believe. My guess is that I believe he's playing shortstop every day in Clearwater. My guess is that he is an everyday third baseman at the major league level, but that, of course, is a conversation for later down the line when you're talking about an Alec Bohm contract. With that being said, if he can be a major league shortstop, and I don't know defensively if he's quite there yet to be a major league shortstop, but I do think that regardless, he is going to be a really good major league player for a long time because he's got a good eye at the plate. He doesn't strike out a ton, and he makes really good contact more times than not. And he's hitting for 319. He's got doubles power. He's hit a couple home runs this season. I'm excited for this kid's future. Yeah,
and in the near future, he's going to be turning 20 years old because his birthday is June 9th. So also happy early birthday to Aiden Miller, who's going to be finally a 20-year-old and no longer a teenager. Which is wild to even think about.
Can you imagine in your professional setting being described as like Like, for example,
my
while you were in
gosh.
college, could you imagine being described as like a definitive professional soccer player
Yeah.
with huge upside, blah, blah, blah? Like, that would get to my head so fast.
Yeah.
I would have the biggest ego, and I already got a big head. My ego would swell.
Well, then
if
let's
people
go
were
even
talking about
let's
me
go
like
even
this.
younger, Tyler, with 18-year-old Jesus Starlin Caba, who also is impressing really and doing really well. So for Caba, he's someone that actually cracked the top 100. Congratulations to him. Cracked the top 100 prospects list as Dodgers Andy Pages graduated. So, and a spot opened up, and it was Caba that stepped into that spot.
Speaking of, real quick, if you don't mind, we got to start moving these guys up the list. Like,
yeah,
I get it if you make your major league debut and get sent back down, you play a week, you get sent back down. Like Jackson Holliday's still technically a prospect, right? But like Andy Pages has played like 40 some odd games this season now. Jackson Churio just got off the list recently, I believe.
Get them out
like
here.
These guys need to graduate off the prospect list much quicker than they do.
Yeah, it needs to happen a lot faster than this. But it is good to see Caba, who was ranked as one of the best players in the 2023 international signing class, who's been a great addition so far. He's got the athleticism. He's a switch hitter. He also is an extreme hit over power guy, and his slashing is looking really well also. His impact and power is not there all the time, but they're hoping to bulk him up. He's only 18, hoping to bulk him up, and he does have a really high ceiling, is what a lot of people are saying, because he's a really good defender. His range, his hands, his footwork, his IQ is all apparently above average, as well as his above average arm. And so far on the season, Starlin Caba, as he moves to that top 100, has had 55 at-bats. He's scored 13 runs, has had 17 hits, 1 home run, 7 RBIs, 9 stolen bases, and is slashing a 309, 465, 920 OPS. And it's been great to see, again, another young guy. He's barely legal. He is 18 years old as of this past December, and playing professional baseball is already showing that he has a really big upswing in terms of what his future can look like. So great to see Starlin Caba, who also has a, versatility, switch hitter, and a lot of pieces that are already there in the intangibles, is doing a really good job so far at the minor league level.
Yeah, and the one thing you brought up that I think is paramount to this guy's success is the fact that he doesn't strike out. Mm-hmm. His 22 strikeouts through his first 54 professional games, split between the Dominican Rookie League and the Florida Rookie League. That's really impressive. You talk about like the bat-to-ball skills. For a guy like Caba, who is never going to be a pop guy, he's never going to be a power guy, I genuinely don't like if he ever gets to 10 in a season, I'll be thrilled. But I expect him to be, you talked about a pure contact hitter type of hitter. We talked about Justin Crawford's negative launch angle. If Caba is, at a 25, it's 25. He's at a 5 launch angle, and he's able to use his speed to be a premier 300 hitter. That's enough for me. I'm never expecting this guy to have a ton of pop, as long as he gets on base. Because I will say this, I've watched a little bit of his clips, and now highlights are obviously the best stuff.
Yeah,
he's so smooth defensively. He is so advanced for being a kid still defensively. The unfortunate part is, more times than not, you don't get Johan Rojas, where you get advanced quickly because of your defensive metrics. So at some point, you're going to stop getting advanced if you're not putting bat on ball. If he's going to hit 300 and not strike out, and he's got 25 stolen bags over the course of those 50 some odd games, that's how you get promoted when you don't have pure power. We know the range is there. He's a shortstop.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any question of it. We talked about Adam Miller. Is he a shortstop? Is he a third baseman? Starlin Caba is a shortstop. There is no question in my mind that's exactly what he is. And so for me, I need him to be a guy who puts bat on ball, a good contact hitter. Need him to not strike out a lot, swipe a couple of bags, and be an elite defender. And so far in his young professional career at the rookie level, he's done all of those things.
He has. And yes, guys, I am hyping up the youngsters. Barely legal is the truth. Those are facts. He just turned 18, which by definition is you are barely legal. And stop it. Everybody stop it. But it is exciting to see the promising future of these young talents, because at 18, 19 years old, we know it might be a few years before you see them crack into the major leagues. Could be sooner, who knows, depending on how they continue to progress. But it's fun to keep an eye on how they're developing at the minor league level. as they're moving up the pipeline and continuing to, tweak some things and get better. So 2 names to keep an eye on: Aiden Miller, Starlin Caba. There's others as well. Justin Crawford, there's a wide Sam Aldegari, a lot of guys that are playing really well in the Phillies pipeline that are making a name for themselves. All right, so I know Provo and John came into the chat asking, did I miss the entire conversation on the 2 back-to-back pitches to Harper's head? Listen, the bench is cleared. Bryce Harper did not have a very good day yesterday in terms of the frustration, the anger, the pitches that were thrown at his head by rookie 22-year-old Harrison. Not a good move. You're now on our hate list. But overall, I think it just was one of those days for Bryce Harper where it's like everything was going wrong. The frustration was absolutely there. But most importantly for the Phillies, they get the win. They're moving on. And now as we're in this off day preparing to start the next series against the Cardinals, fun fact for you guys, because heading into Memorial Day weekend, the 6 division leaders were the Guardians, the Dodgers, the Yankees, I'm missing somebody actually. The Guardians, the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mariners, the Phillies, and the Brewers. That's what it was, the Brewers. And so there was a stat that was put out that since 1995, there has only been one season in which all 6 first-place teams on Memorial Day went on to win their division. Since 1995. That came in 1998. So I saw the question and I was curious.
Remember it like it was yesterday.
Oh, I know.
I was a whopping...
Don't you guys remember that?
I was a whopping 4 that summer.
Don't you remember when all 6 top teams on Memorial Day were the 6 teams that won their division? So it does make you wonder, of these 6 that are currently sitting top of their division between the Phillies, Mariners, Brewers, Yankees, Dodgers, and Guardians, who will be the team standing at the end of the season? It's a lot of baseball left to play. So Major League Baseball naturally posted a graphic of, if the season were to end today, this is what the playoff picture would look like, because it's never too early to start talking about the postseason.
There's only 100 games left to play.
It's not even June yet. We can start talking about the postseason with over 100 games left. But this is interesting. These are things to keep an eye on, because I know everybody's always worried about what the Phillies are going to look like in the playoffs. Well, this is what they would look like in the playoffs if things started today. Very interesting matchups. Of course, the Phillies would be one of the 4 teams that would get that first round bye. They wouldn't have to play in the wild card. Any of these jump off the page at you? We've got Brewers, San Diego would be a wild card matchup for a 3-6. A 4-5 matchup would be San Francisco, Atlanta. On the other side in the AL, we'd have the Orioles and Royals. Orioles and Royals. Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Wow, I just realized that. And then we'd have Seattle and Minnesota also as that 3-6 wildcard AL matchup to see who's going to face the Yankees and Guardians. And then, of course, Dodgers and Phillies for the NL. Interesting, though, because this would be a fun playoff picture.
If this were to be how it ended, if Kansas City were to find a way to beat Baltimore, which right this second, I know Kansas City's playing really good ball and Cole Reagans has been awesome and Bobby Witt could legitimately maybe be an MVP candidate. I would take Baltimore to win that series, especially hosting that wild card round. Man. But if Kansas City were to win that series, you would get a guarantee of a team from the AL Central to be in the American League Championship Series, which if you would have said that to me in March, I would have said you were certifiably insane. Because yes, the division got better, right? We know Kansas City spent money. We know that the Twins were pretty good heading into the year. I think a lot of us thought that they were going to maybe repeat as division winners. I believe you or Jamie had Cleveland win in the division, and they've been. I think they've been better than even his expectations. Yeah. But to say that there is a potential to have 3 AL Central teams as playoff teams, I think is nuts. But they've all been, and I know Minnesota's kind of been their own worst enemy, where they'll go on a run and then they'll lose 10 straight and then they'll go on a run and then they'll lose 7 straight. But I still do believe that the Twins are better than the Royals. Obviously not record-wise, but I think roster construction-wise, I would take the Twins over the Royals. But it's a lot of fun to look at this, hypothetically speaking, to sit here and go, the AL Central could possibly have 3 playoff teams.
It's wild. It's still very early in the season, obviously, guys. But, hey, blame Major League Baseball, not me. They're the ones that brought it up, and also we're bringing up the facts about, long-term how teams tend to pan out. Because as we know, it's one thing to be at the top. It's harder to stay there, though. So it's great to see the Guardians, who are having a really incredible season, one of the best teams in the league right now, one of the best records, but also just playing really good baseball. And there's some teams that are surprising people. You look at, as you mentioned, Kansas City, the Mariners, even the Twins, with the amount of games that they've been rattled off. We all expected the Orioles to be good. We all expected the Yankees, the Dodgers to be good.
Yep.
Of course, we knew the Phillies would also be very good.
Well, I think the league expected the Phillies. Maybe not. Yeah. Nobody expected them to be this good,
right,
but I think everybody expected them to be a playoff
but
team.
There are teams there, even the Brewers, to be honest, that when you look at how this season has started as we're preparing to cross into June, there's been a lot of surprises in a good way. I think it's made baseball fun.
I thought the Brewers were going to stink.
Yeah, I mean, it's made baseball really fun because it's not just the top 4 or 5 teams and a huge gap. It's been a lot of surprise. I mean, even the Rockies, I hate to say it, you didn't expect the Rockies to, beat the Orioles, sweep the Rangers. Like, there's no guarantees. Any given day, anybody can win, and that's what makes the Phillies starts that much more incredible because it is a competitive season. So that's why there's so many teams that are under 500.
Yeah, this is a very parity-laden league this season. If I had to ask you heading into June, is there any team that is not currently a playoff team that you think will be a playoff team?
Right.
Who would you pick anybody, or do you have anybody
who's not currently a playoff team?
Not currently a playoff team.
That I think
because I have one that jumps off the page to me.
That can sneak in. Not in the AL. I think that's pretty set. Who are you going to say?
I think the Padres. I think the Padres will be a playoff team at the end of the year.
Okay.
I think they're too good. I know their pitching staff's not as good as it's been in years past, but Dylan Cease has been really strong. Matt Waldron.
Oh, they are in, though, as of now.
I love watching Matt Waldron play.
They're a wild card spot.
Oh, they are the final wild card spot. Okay, that's my fault. I misread the graphic. My bad. All right, so let me rephrase it. I think that the Giants will fall out entirely. I don't think the Giants are a playoff team, and I think the Padres move up. And then if that's the case, I'm looking at probably the Cubs to take that final spot, but there's still a lot. Of course, there's 100 games left. I would say I think Texas can get this together still.
Yeah, that's the thing. It is still early. There are teams like the Rangers who are dealing with injuries, so that's where things are going to start to shake up. And then, unfortunately, teams like the Braves that we talk about with Ronald Acuna Jr.'s torn ACL, that who knows how they're going to continue. They already dealt with the injury of losing Spencer Strider. Max Fried has actually been looking really good for them. Has thrown 2 complete games and has been solid. So they are, and Chris Sale, and they are having other guys
hold on.
that are.
Jamie's not here. Curse you, Alex Anthopoulos. I got to do it right.
They still have a lot of talent there, but it's a long season. You never know how it's gonna shake out. I know John Lemmerman's mentioning how the Brewers are doing it with Freddie Peralta and 4 nobodies in their rotation. That's exactly it.
Impressive.
It's been by committee for some of these teams. All right, well, last thing as we wrap up, Tyler and Brenna, because this is exciting news that's broke earlier this week, and we've been officially seeing how it plays out, because there has been a committee that actually has been working hard to change the past of how Major League Baseball was organized in terms of stat keeping and everything. And that is with the announcing of integrating the Negro Leagues statistics into Major League Baseball. And I know for many people, they may have been caught off guard, surprised. Not everybody even loved to hear this. I think it's great for baseball. We have the Baseball Hall of Fame. We have so much that you look over the history of baseball, and it's been a slow progression to try to right the wrongs, because the Negro Leagues was not by choice, guys. Hate to break it to you. That wasn't by choice that guys like Josh Gibson weren't allowed to play Major League Baseball. It wasn't by choice that Jackie Robinson became the first to break the color barrier. That was a choice for him to break it, but there shouldn't have been a color barrier to break in the first place. So when you look back over the centuries of the history of baseball, there's been a lot of really good talent that did not play Major League Baseball. The Negro League specifically, it was 2-3 games a day. It was them having to figure out their own transportation. They were grinding, and they were really good players that were never given an opportunity, which is why I still chuckle when people act like I don't belong in baseball rooms, because there still is a huge demographic of this sport that's not welcoming in all diversity. And so it's great to see these steps, because it's needed to be able to incorporate the past into the present. And I hope that it will change the future for people to realize baseball is everybody. Male, female. Females were allowed. any race were allowed. I have a lot of family members that I can openly say as somebody that's black that has literally said, I don't like baseball because it's racist. I don't like baseball because it doesn't include us, because I go to games and I don't see people that look like myself, because I go to games and I'm not welcomed. Whereas you go to other sports and that's not the case. So this is a small step that I hope will continue to help in a big way, as Major League Baseball has now shaken up the record books. And with that, Josh Gibson became Major League Baseball's career leader with a .372 batting average. He passed Ty Cobb's 367 average. One more, and then as more Negro League records are being incorporated, it was a 3-year research project of them trying to fit things together. The difficult part is, as some people have complained about, is the stat keeping for the Negro Leagues wasn't great. Again, not their fault.
Not the players' fault
at all. It was because of the fact that the league was looked down upon and wasn't taken seriously in the same way. They didn't have the same resources. They didn't have the same opportunities. Sounds a lot like what we're dealing with in women's sports, to be honest. And so for Gibson, who we saw move up. It's great to see. There's been some others that have had some major changes in terms of stats. So Gibson's .466 average for the 1943 Homestead Grays became the season standard.
Real quick, think about that. You just said a .466 average, not an OBP.
Average.
Not an OPS, none of that. That guy almost got a hit every two at-bats. Just an unbelievable career that Josh Gibson had. And, I mean, statistically speaking, there are stories that tell that statistically speaking, you go past the stats and get into the stories of how many home runs did Josh Gibson really hit, right? So they have statistically, they have a number. But like you said, at times, stat keeping and bookkeeping wasn't particularly strong. There are stories that say Josh Gibson theoretically, plausibly is the home run king.
Right.
And the guy is one of the greatest players to ever walk the planet. You talk about the slugging percentage, the near one slugging percentage in 1937, which now becomes a record. You talk about the OPS of 1.4 back-to-back years. Back-to-back, 37 and 43. 1.474, 1.435. This guy was an elite player, and I think that this is so long overdue to get these guys the recognition they deserve. And we talk about Josh Gibson. We talk about Jackie Robinson, right? We talk about Satchel Paige. We talk about Willie Mays getting 10 extra hits. But there are so many players over the course of the Negro Leagues history that deserve this honor because of the fact that, like you mentioned, the exclusivity of Major League Baseball for so long to these players. These guys would have been Major League players. They would have been elite Major League players in some of their cases, like Josh Gibson, Satchel Paige. Satchel Paige was running up his strikeout number when he did pitch in the majors at like 47 years old. He made his Major League debut, I want to say at 42 or 43. These guys belong in the record books because they belong. And like, I know that sounds redundant, but they belong in these in these conversations.
Absolutely. And as you're mentioning, I know John Lumberman's talking in the chat about, stat keeping for baseball in the 1880s to the 1900s. That wasn't perfect, but no one ever discredits that. I mean, there was a committee back in 1969 that started recognizing the 6 major leagues dating up to 1876. So they looked at the National from 1876. They looked at the American from 1901. They looked at the American Association from the 1880s. The Union Association, the Players League, the Federal League, those are all leagues that were pre-1915, and they incorporated those baseball records. Why not include the Negro Leagues? And so for Rob Manfred, who was mentioning, it was just a chance to show respect for great players who performed in the Negro Leagues due to circumstances beyond their control. And once those circumstances changed, they demonstrated that they were true major leaguers, because there were people that believed that because of the color of your skin, you weren't as talented as somebody else. That was why segregation existed, because the entire community of Black people were looked down upon. And so they took the standards for season leaders for Major League Baseball, which is the exact same standards for the Negro Leagues, of 3.1 plate appearances or 1 inning for each game played by a player's team, to calculate the statistics and to update them. And so an official updated version of the database for Major League Baseball is going to be public before the St. Louis Cardinals San Francisco Giants game, that tribute game to the Negro Leagues on June 20th at Rickwood Field in Birmingham, Alabama.
Which, by the way,
so that'll be fantastic.
Such a cool idea to play a game.
I'm so excited
because
for that.
they're putting a ton of money into that stadium to renovate it. It has so much historic significance and it's been around. What year did the stadium open? It was like early 1900s. I really should look it up, but the fact that they are playing this game 1910 is when it opened. The fact that they're playing this game is such a cool story and such of significance for so many players. Like you mentioned earlier, like there are a countless amount of people who don't feel included in this game. Even to this day, still don't feel included in this game. And,
I know I don't feel included in this game.
And to be able to have more inclusivity than we've ever had in this league by adapting these stats into the record books, by acknowledging the fact that Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige and all of these, Minnie Minoso, and all of these players are elite level players. It's a beautiful thing to see the league is finally rectifying. Shouldn't say rectifying. That's not it. The two do not equate. Like, the exclusivity does not equate. That's the thing.
Nothing can truly make up for the disservice that was done.
But it is a really important step, I think, in the right direction to allow the understanding of what we already know to be true. These guys were damn good ball players, and now we have statistics to back it up.
Right, and so some of the stats that were updated as we wrap up, because we are much over time.
Yeah, that's my bad. I told
No, it's fine because
I jinxed us.
We need to share this. I know you did, but as mentioned, some of the numbers that are changed. So Charlie Chino Smith, his .451 batting average to the 1929 New York Lincoln Giants trails Gibson's .466 average. They did overtake the .440 average by Hugh Duffy for the National League's Boston team back in 1894, by the way. We don't talk about that stat. Gibson also became the career leader in slugging percentage with a .718 and OPS with a 1.177, which moves him ahead of Babe Ruth, who had a .690 and a 1.164. I think this is one of the hard things that people are struggling with, is wrapping your head around the fact that some of the names that you've seen as record holders at the top spot now might move to 2, or 3 might move to 4. But hey, if you have better numbers, it makes sense. Gibson's .974 slugging percentage in 1937 became the season record. Barry Bonds' .863 record in 2001 dropped to 5th. So there have been some changes that have happened, moving up, moving down. Willie Mays actually gained 10 hits from the 1948 Birmingham Black Barons, which increases his total.
He gained 10 hits, but his batting average dipped.
I know. And then Minnie Minoso
that's how good Willie Mays was.
Hits. Yeah, it is. That's wild, for sure. And then even Jackie Robinson, he was credited with 49 additional hits with the 1945 Kansas City Monarchs, which increased his total to 1,567. There's more numbers, but it's just great to see this small step. Again, like you were mentioning, Tyler, nothing can truly ever or fix or change the history of the disservice that was done with the fact that the Negro Leagues existed in the first place, and Major League Baseball has not always been inclusive. But it's good that Rob Manfred and Major League Baseball has been actively taking steps to change the future of the game. We can't change the past, unfortunately. I'd love to do that. We all would, I'm sure. But we can at least change the future to make sure that sports are more inclusive, that our society is more inclusive. So baseball is doing their small steps. The world out there has a lot of work to do. I know, Michael, in the chat, you're talking about how things haven't been fixed. Listen, we all are aware of the fact it's going to take a very long time, and probably not in our generation, for things to fully resolve. But Rob Manfred's at least taking some small steps in terms of baseball. All right, that being said, let's get out of here. We have a post-game show tomorrow. We'll be going live top of the 9th, where you guys can join us. The opening of the Cardinal series, Miles Michaelis, who could also be Michaelis. Michaelis.
Yeah,
that's what I said.
The loss doesn't need to
Actually,
be.
I didn't know that because I wrote that down before. Michaelis, because it sounds better. Whatever. Miles Michaelis. Aaron Nola, more importantly, gets to go tomorrow. So we'll see you guys live for our post-game show. Thank you to Brenna for joining us as producer today for our bonus.
Yeah, we need to get out of here. She's got a show to do in like 30 minutes.
And we'll see you guys tomorrow for more on PHLY Phillies podcast. Have a good one.
We all silly like the mayor.